Welcome, Sketchlab friends. Today we're going to draw a retro Nintendo Game Boy. We're going to start off drawing the face of this device. So we're going to draw a horizontal line across. You'll notice with the Game Boy, it's basically a rectangular shape, and the bottom right hand corner is going to be a curved line. So I'm just going to establish that rectangular shape. And then here we go, we're going to do the curve. And that's the shape of a Nintendo Game Boy. Just going to clean this up a little bit. So today we're going to be using a 45-degree angle, and this is a somewhat of a cheat method for what's called one-point perspective. So off in the distance, these lines would actually meet at a vanishing point. And so all three corners, we want those angles to match, so they're all at 45 degrees. And we drew a horizontal line, so you can see these two horizontal lines match. And now we have a vertical line. And now curving as we get down to the bottom right hand corner. Okay, we're going to start working on the screen of this Game Boy. We have our horizontal line. And you can see it's a bit of a rectangular shape, and we are going to curve the right hand corner. So right here we're going to curve the corner of our rectangle. So the Nintendo Game Boy came out in the year 1989. Now this is going to be, and the screen was actually a monochrome, square shape, so it wouldn't be in color like we see Mario over here. But it was actually an 8-bit handheld device, and that's where the NES started. It was an 8-bit system, and it really changed gaming. Completely changed it. Before that we had the Atari 2600, like the Commodore 64. And they had a really popular magazine called Nintendo Power. And so you'd have all the latest gaming news, and you'd have, the cool thing about Nintendo is they had all sorts of hidden worlds and cheat codes and cool stuff like that. And it was like the most popular thing on the planet back then. So we're going to start off the controller basically combining two rectangles. So one is going to be vertical. I'm going to find the center of this just by creating an X from corner to corner. And that's how you find the center. Now I'm just going to draw a rectangular shape. So Nintendo sold over 118 million of these Game Boys. And it was the best-selling handheld console of all time. And a Nintendo Game Boy was actually taken to outer space in 1993 by a Russian cosmonaut. And it worked up there in outer space. Alright, so we're going to draw the buttons. So we have a circle, and the next one is going to be a little bit of a diagonal in relationship to the first one. And the first ever Pokemon game, Red and Blue, came out on the Game Boy. Alright, so we're going to draw these two ovals. Okay, so on the right hand corner of our screen here, I'm going to draw a little bit of a diagonal line. And that's going to help me line up these lines here for the speaker. And then eventually, in 1988, the Game Boy turned into the Game Boy Advanced. So here we have the 45-degree angle, and we're going to add the third dimension here to these buttons. So I've got a 45-degree angle, and now I'm going to curve a line to the right. And we added some thickness. So the third dimension is known as depth, and you could also call that length. Same thing, 45-degree angle, and I'm going to curve that line around to the right. And once again, this is a cheat method for doing 1-point perspective. So if we're using real 1-point perspective, we would actually have a vanishing point, and we'd actually be drawing these lines to a vanishing point. And you can see we're just keep drawing these 45-degree angles, and then we're matching these lines. What lines am I matching? Well, this is a horizontal, so I draw another horizontal. This one's vertical, so I match another vertical line. It's a 45-degree angle, horizontal, and horizontal, matching those lines. 45-degree angle, and horizontal line. So I have two Sharpies here, just a regular Sharpie, and I have a fine Sharpie as well for fine details. So I was pretty lucky growing up because we got to go to the arcade a lot. And so we get a roll of quarters, and if you don't know arcade etiquette, back then if someone was playing a video game ahead of you, you would place your quarter up on the screen of the arcade game, and then that would let that person know that you were next to play the game. So if you wanted to continue to play that game for a long time, you could line up 10 quarters across the screen, and so if someone was walking by, they'd know, like, oh man, this guy's going to be on this game for a while. And nowadays, these consoles at home, all the graphics and the gameplay are pretty amazing compared to these little pixelated games. So the first video game we had was called Pong, and there was one game. It was kind of like tennis. And back then the graphics were minimalistic. So Nintendo had a few two-player games, but most of them were one-player games. So while your friend was playing, you'd just sit there and watch them play and then wait for your turn if you're playing on your Nintendo. So you can see this fine detailed marker is really awesome to get these little details here. Use that for the buttons. Almost done outlining. So the Nintendo company actually started off as a playing card company. So they made playing cards. And their very first game, which I remember playing a lot of, was Donkey Kong. So that was a really popular game back then. And that was also the first appearance of Mario. And it's funny because they started off as a playing card company, and it turns out that Pokemon saved the Game Boy. It also saved the Game Boy Advanced. So I decided to go for more of a retro color scheme today. So I'm doing a light yellow. So this is ivory. Now I am using Posca paint markers, but you could use whatever you have. If you have alcohol-based markers, crayons, colored pencils. And I always recommend getting a 24 or a 48 pack because there's more variation in color. So you'll have lighter and darker values of every single color to choose from. So back then, memory was limited on these video games, and Luigi almost got cut out of the game Mario Brothers because there just was not enough memory. So they found out a way to turn and just switch the color of Mario from red to green. But I think one of the biggest turning points for Nintendo is Nintendo almost made a PlayStation. So in the early 90s, Sony and Nintendo partnered on a CD-based console, but Nintendo backed out, and then leading to the Sony to create the PlayStation instead. The Nintendo went on to create the Wii, which ultimately had poor sales. And then Nintendo went back to the handheld Switch. This is Robin Green. This is going to be creating a little bit of a retro lighting effect. So some of my favorite Nintendo games was obviously Super Mario Brothers. Played a lot of that. Mega Man was really cool. Metroid, Castlevania, Contra. And there was actually in a game called Akari Warriors. But every time my brother and I, we played Akari Warriors, because it's a 2-player game, we get really deep into the game, and then the game would freeze on us. So every single time, you could only get so far in the game, and the game would freeze. We'd have to reset the game. We could never finish that game. So the cool thing about YouTube was, I wonder if someone's ever won Akari Warriors. So I was actually able to go and see someone win Akari Warriors, because I wanted to see, was the ending of the game cool? And it wasn't. It was not a good ending. I probably would have been really disappointed. Be like, this ending's not that great. Yeah, they had another game called Bionic Commando, which was pretty cool. So this is a 3M white Posca paint marker. If you are not using Poscas, if you're using alcohol-based markers, you would want a white gel pen, and you could achieve these highlights as well. So some of my favorite original arcade games is obviously we had Pac-Man and Space Invaders. There was Tempest. This is light blue. But I think Donkey Kong, Dig Dug, Joust. I think there was Hamburger Time. Those were a lot of times I was playing those games in the arcades when I was a little kid. Well, if you enjoyed drawing this Nintendo Game Boy with me, check out my How to Draw with Posca Paint Markers playlist. You'll see it at the end of this video. And you could watch more videos. It's got a little bit more of a touch up the outlining. Well, awesome job, guys. You just drew a Nintendo Game Boy with Posca markers. Take a step back and admire your work. Look at how those colors pop and the details bring it to life. Well, if you had fun, hit that like button. It really helps. And like I said, if you want to keep creating, check out my other tutorials, the playlist. And in the comment section below, why don't you post your favorite Nintendo video game or arcade game? So as I was saying before, when you played a Nintendo, there was just a few two-player games, but now most games are multiplayer, and you can play online with friends and headsets. That's completely changed gaming. It's way more interactive and social. And it's kind of cool to be able to play with your friends. And people could be in other countries too. I've played with friends in Canada, all over the place. So it's kind of cool how video games, you know, we get a lot of peace and relaxation from them. But it's also a fun time with our friends. Well, catch you in the next video.